Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for your patience this morning. It's a brand new week. We're vlogging. We're here. We're naming goals. We're talking about writing. We're talking about what I'm reading this week. We're talking about what I hope to learn, story clubs, settle in. I'm going to lay everything out, and I'd love to hear what you're working on as well. If you're here and you can hear me in the chat, had some technical difficulties getting this set up this morning, so let me know if you can hear me. I hope you can. I'm just going to dive in here. I see there's a slight delay maybe on the audio, but just hang in and listen to the tunes, as it were. So, hey, Takashi, welcome. Good morning. All right, so welcome. My name's Asa Merritt. If it's your first time here, I am a former screenwriter, now writing short fiction, documenting that process, what I'm writing, how I'm getting to where I want to be professionally, how I'm getting to where I want to be creatively. Today, I want to talk again about my big goals, my macro goals. I haven't shared those on the channel in quite some time. And I want to remind myself, I am the prize, right? So yes, during that live stream, we're going to talk about everything I just mentioned. We're also going to talk about a writing life type thing. I do this at the beginning of every week. I call it the big idea. And for me, what I've found is that so much of my best writing happens because of choices I make that are kind of adjacent to my writing life, setting myself up for success in my sort of personal life, my physical being, all these things. When I'm attuned, I realize have such an impact on what I'm doing. So I always try to engage with a big idea for the week. And this week I'm looping back to an idea I had a few weeks. As we know, health is not linear. We make progress 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the last few weeks have definitely been a step back on my idea of doing one thing at a time for longer stretches of time, which by that I mean keeping your concentration, keeping your consciousness on one thing so that you train in getting the kind of concentration required for deep writing. Things as simple as not bringing your phone when I walk my dogs. These things have an impact. And last night was a performance that I produced. I run a horror collective here in Mexico City where I live called Diario de Terror, and we had a show. This project required so much time on my phone. I had to be on my phone all the time. I was coordinating actors. I was coordinating writers. I was interfacing with the theater. And it was an amazing show. Takashi, I think you were there last night. Mateo, Sarah, 60 Hangers, welcome everyone. Hi, Laura, good morning. I'm so glad you all are here. It was amazing. It was an amazing show. Folks left inspired. The writers, the actors were so grateful. And it was a huge success. But I realized that in mounting that show, I spent so much energy kind of like producing, emailing, Instagram. I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, but you got to get on there and promote the event. And I said, hey, you know what? This actually really inhibited in some ways my writing the last few weeks. Now that that event is over, I kind of want to reclaim my attention a little bit, distance myself from my phone a little bit, and just get down to business on the writing front with a little more focus. Here we go, writing goals. Okay, so some exciting stuff is happening on the writing front. You may have been following my Christmas horror story. On this channel, we do workshops on Friday with my friend Sarah Ray Warner, who I believe is in the chat. Welcome, Sarah, another writer on YouTube and colleague and friend. And during one of these Friday workshops a few weeks ago, we did a Christmas horror workshop. Out of that came the seed for a really exciting story that centers around this conflict between Santa, this man in a Santa suit in the mall, and this young girl who comes up to him and hands him a letter. And on this letter is something he is not expecting at all. I like the setup. This story has a good shape and spine. The ending is exciting and dramatic, but it just felt a little bit flat. And I got a couple great pieces of feedback from a couple readers And they both identified that they were more excited about the tween in this story than Santa. The story had been written in the POV of Santa. And I was kind of into this like little deranged villainous child also. And so what I did over the weekend was just gutted the story and wrote it afresh through the girl's POV rather than Santa's POV. And so you'll see here now Santa is back under drafting. Santa was under revising, and it's back to the drawing board. It's back to the drawing board, but in a really exciting way, because I think this story is going to come out of the ringer that it's in a way where it is more dynamic, more original, more riveting, controversial. It's going to be a lot of things that I think make it more exciting. And so that's what I'm going to be continuing to work on this week, is creating the new version of that story. Additionally, last week I wrote a first draft in a sort of blackout sprint on a live stream, which we're going to be doing more of this week. I want to really kind of get more granular and immersive with this channel and just turn the camera on more often. And I invite you to join me during these work sessions just to be in space with one another. I'm really grateful that you all are here, and this kind of community co-working, I really believe in its power. And so during one of these live streams last week, I wrote an entire story, top to bottom, and I don't have a title for it yet. I'm calling it Runaway Story for the time being. And that just kind of came off the dome. I really don't even know what I have there, so I'm gonna like engage with that story this week. Additionally, Under the Pear Tree, which is a story that I'm also really excited about, that arrived at something of a first draft form. I've let it sit for a week. I'm gonna go back into that story today and see how it feels, or this week at the very least. Because I am trying to get published, and because it is important to me to talk about my publishing goals as well, I've listed here 2 stories that I've written in the last sort of 3 to 4 months. Sam and The Visit, these are 2 pieces of flash fiction. These are out on submission right now, and I'm still waiting to hear back on those. Reading goals and plans this week. So per usual on this channel, there are 2 story clubs. Sarah and I are working our way through 2 anthologies of short stories. I'm writing short fiction right now, so I'm trying to read really good short fiction, immerse myself in this, and learn as much as possible. On Wednesdays at 9 o'clock my time, which is Mountain Time, 11 EST, 8 PST, we will be reading a story from this collection, The Big Book of Science Fiction. The story this week is called A Martian Odyssey by Stanley Weinbaum. So certainly we'll be reading that this week. And additionally, for Thursday on the Horror Story Club, this is the book, this is the anthology, The Dark Descent. The story this week is The Autopsy by Michael Shea. S-H-E-A is how you spell that. So also up here on the screen, Septology by John Fosse. I heard this man's name pronounced Foss the other day. I really need to check how to pronounce it. This is a Norwegian writer. This is a Nobel Prize winner. I discovered him just very recently. I read a couple of his novellas at this point. I read one called Alice at the Fire, which was exquisite and beautiful, a meditation on sorrow and grief that kind of broke the river of frozen ice inside me, as Kafka might say. He famously said that was the point of literature, to break the river of ice inside us. It did that. I also read another novella of his called A Shining, which is about a man who goes into the woods and possibly perishes there. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And so now I'm taking on what's considered his magnum opus, this book called The Septology, which is a series of 7 books, 1,000 pages in total. And what's attracting me to this writer right now is his style, the way he writes sentences. It's very stream of consciousness. It's very propulsive. He eschews punctuation all the time. in order to keep the story going and flying and flying and flying, not unlike that other story that Sarah and I talked about last week from the new Nobel Prize winner, if you caught that stream. I love this type of writing, and his stories exist mostly in kind of, it's very meditative. Not a lot is happening, which is not the kind of fiction I'm writing right now. I'm actually really compelled to write stories where every sentence something is happening in the material world. We're moving forward. This is like Shirley Jackson type writing. This is Samantha Schweblin type writing, active storytelling. And so he doesn't do that, but I love his sentences. And so what I'm trying to do here is kind of wed the type of story I'm writing with the way that this guy writes. That's the kind of a project right now that's happening in my writing life. Community. So that's y'all. Nothing is showing on the screen. I'm not sure why. But, per usual, there will be a Friday workshop. Sarah and I have really gotten on a roll. If you caught our space horror workshop last Friday, that was a success. Thank you for coming to that. This week, we are going to be doing another writing workshop, TBD, on what that will be about. And what we're going to try to do here moving forward is integrate the stories that we're reading for the Wednesday and Thursday story clubs into the workshops. And so I know a lot of y'all are reading those stories. And so what we want to do is, in addition to talking about what we're learning as writers during the story club live streams, we're also going to start kind of formalizing some of those lessons and kind of probing certain ideas even deeper. So for example, I want to maybe go back to The Crowd by Ray Bradbury this Friday. Sarah, we haven't talked about this yet, but one idea I have for a potential workshop is kind of a deep dive into this notion of the fear of the unknown, how the other generates fear. We know this as readers, we know this as writers, but sometimes our understanding of it remains abstract, and I want to just dig in as most practically as possible into that idea, and just so that is a potential topic for Friday's workshop. I feel like I have more news for you that I'm forgetting. I feel like I'm leaving something out, but I don't think so. I want to just, I'm not going to do a full story or anything today, but I want to just get some poetry in the air together, so that we start this week with language. I had a creative writing teacher once who always started class by reading a poem, and his sort of line about that was like, words are the bare bones, the core elements of what we're doing, and poets are engaging with words on the most precise level possible. And so that's what I want to do. So this is Ted Hughes's. I don't know if you know him. This was the partner spouse of Sylvia Plath. Somewhat controversial. I love his poetry, and he did an adaptation of Ovid's The Metamorphoses, which is a series of tales. And I'm just going to read a few paragraphs here because he's one heck of a poet, and this is one heck of a book. Now I am ready to tell how bodies are changed into different bodies. I summon the supernatural beings who first contrived the transmogrifications into the stuff of life. You did it for your own amusement. Descend again. Be pleased to reanimate this revival of those marvels. Reveal now exactly how they were performed from the beginning up to this moment. Hot. Creation myths. I know, I feel you, Lore Huntress. Lore Huntress says, I dislike Hughes because of Plath, but I love his poetry. I just can't quit him. Girl, I'm with you. The controversy there is that Hughes was emotionally abusive, and there's a lot of sad stories there. I am also a deep fan, stand by, of Sylvia Plath. Gosh, this was an early, important book for me. I have an idea to do a 5 books that make me the writer who I am today. This is one of them. And ironically, despite the intense effect and negative impact that he had on that marriage, there is a description in this book, y'all, of when she met him. Holy shit. Yo, if you want to read what a real crush from a real heart feels like, it is amazing. She describes when she met him at a party and all the feelings came, and it's like, wow, that's how you love. Margot, hey everybody, Sarah, Mateo, 60 Hangers, everyone, Takashi, thank you for being here. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And like I said, for folks who are here often, I'm gonna really just start streaming a lot, I think, because last week when I did that, I wrote a whole first draft of a story. So have a great week. We'll see you in the Discord. I'll put information about joining the Discord in this video description. And we'll talk soon.